So hi, everybody. My name is Isabella. I'm here on behalf of Reimagine 17. So we're a youth-led non-for-profit, and our goal is to help kind of bridge the gap between like youth-led activism and like knowledge about SDGs. So I'm going to share my screen and get my presentation started, and we will get going. All right, and if anybody can't hear me, please just let me know in the chat because I probably won't notice. Okay. So the topic of today's workshop is reactivating your radical imagination. And we stated it as a workshop because we really want people to participate. I know people don't like talking. I don't like talking during Zoom meetings, but I think this will be really interesting. I'm really here to like hold space for your voices and ideas. And our hope is that it will foster like some inspiration for people in their own activism, listening to other people and what they're passionate about. So we're going to go over a land acknowledgement. We're going to go over a little introduction and then quickly go over SDGs. We'll get into some radical imagination stuff and hopefully have a conversation around that for reflection and then just ways to get involved. So for my land acknowledgement, I wanted to start with a quote. This is by Chelsea Ball. She's Métis. And it goes, if we think of territorial acknowledgements as sites of potential disruption, they can be transformative acts that to some extent undo Indigenous erasure. I believe this is true as long as these acknowledgements discomfort both those speaking and hearing the words. The fact of Indigenous presence should force non-Indigenous people to confront their own place on these lands. So I wanted to start with that because I think it's important when we do land acknowledgements, not to make them like just a performative thing we say at the beginning, but to really think about the implication of like why we have to say it, and especially in environmental or activist spaces, like what that means in this like lands like of so-called Canada to be activists on Native lands. So I'm going to read my land acknowledgement, and then maybe we'll all take a minute just to think about that. So we pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their longstanding relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region and all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courage, ageist leaders, past, present, and future. So I'm in Ottawa, if you hadn't guessed, so this applies to me, but please take a moment to think about your own land that you're on and what that means to you. We'll just give it 1 minute. All right, thank you for holding that space with me. We're now going to move on to introductions. So again, I know people don't like talking during Zoom meetings, but I would really appreciate if everybody would just say their name, if they're comfortable with their pronouns. And then my icebreaker question is, what's your favorite cryptid? Because I really want this to be an interactive presentation. So I'll start, and then you can raise your hand if you want to share, or you can put it in the chat, whatever you like, but please, 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 at some way, just let us know that you're here and paying attention. So as I said before, my name is Isabella. My pronouns are she, her, and my favorite cryptid, which by the way is like kind of like a mythical creature that science can't prove exists, is a griffin, obviously because my last name is Griffin, so that makes a lot of sense. So if anybody wants to share in the chat or raise their hand and let us know. So Shira uses she, they pronouns, and favorite cryptid is the Loch Ness Monster. Great choice. I do believe that one's real. It's just been around for so long, I probably had babies. Michelle uses she, they pronouns, and it's a Pegasus or a unicorn, also very cool. I think the Pegasus is better because it can fly. I don't really know what unicorns can do. Andrea, she, her, and also a fan of the Loch Ness Monster. Love that. Okay, I'll assume everybody is thinking about these questions in their heart and has strong opinions about cryptids, as I do. Okay, she, they, Bigfoot. That's another great one. And it's a North American one, so it's like topical. Anyway, we're going to move right along here. And we're just going to start with a really basic question of what does sustainability mean to you? And I don't just mean like the definition of sustainability, because I think we all know that or have an opinion on it maybe. I'm more interested in like when you envision sustainability or sustainable world, like what does that look like to you? So we're going to go into breakout rooms and we are all going to talk about that with people that we've never met before, which is super, super fun. And I'll be bopping in and out. So hopefully you guys will be getting to know each other a little bit better.
Isabella, you're on mute.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It's like the third time I did that. I'm not great at switching back and forth. Anyway, yeah, thank you all so much for sharing. Really interesting conversation. I can tell a lot of people have like a lot of care for sustainability, which is great. We're going to go back to the presentation and we'll keep going. So I'm just going to go over a brief introduction to the SDGs in case somebody is not familiar with them, and then we'll get into the topic of radical imagination. So the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are also known as the Global Goals, and they were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. There's 17 SDGs, that's why we're Reimagine 17, and they are integrated. They recognize that action in one area will affect outcomes in others, and that development must be balanced by social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So if we examine the SDGs critically, we can see that there's some strengths and there's also some weaknesses. So the strengths, they're multidisciplinary, they cover a lot of things for people who are talking about like how everything is connected in terms of sustainability and care. They're great for that. They're also internationally recognized and they have existing momentum. So there are projects all across the world related to the SDGs, which is super helpful for seeing change on a broad scale. But on the other hand, they are a colonial institution, so they're thinking through a colonial framework, and there's no enforcement. And as we've seen with things like climate, or carbon emissions, if you can't enforce it, it's probably not going to happen in time or in a pace that's like meaningful. It's also very like bureaucratic and top down. So, like the leadership up at the top is making all the decisions. And so it's not locally responsive. It's not really listening to the people who are on the ground and dealing with the issues that these SDGs are supposed to solve. So we can see there are strengths and weaknesses to them, which doesn't mean we can't interact with them. I think it's just important to be aware of that when we try to work with an SDG. So this is where radical imagination comes in. So the complex definition of radical imagination is our ability to challenge socio-political possibility. A more simplified definition would be radical imagination is the ability to imagine the world, life, and social institutions not as they are, but as they might be. So radical imagination in practice is embodied by actions that refuse to enact change within the pre-existing structures, but rather imagine the social and political structures, reimagine the social and political structures themselves. So why radical reimagination? So I see the benefits in that it envisions a future where our demands for social, economic, and political justice are met. We're not limited by what people think can be done or what has been done. It really allows for a new possibility for the world. It allows us to broaden our scope and challenge the boundaries of our current world. For example, challenging like colonial institutions and capitalism, which seem inherent to the world. But that being said, like I think this is an Angela Davis quote, so did the Divine Right of Kings, and we were able to imagine a world past that. So in radical imagination, we look past the bounds of this, like that hold our world now to what we could make them. And it also grounds our advocacy and productive positive energy. I think a lot of the time in the sustainability movement, when we see what's happening in the world, people can get really weighed down and very discouraged. And radical imagination, while productive, is also like a joyous activity. It's like allows your creative spark to come to life. And I think that's so important because we're imagining a brighter world. So I think staying in that positive space and positive energy is really productive for our activism. It's also an effective direct response to what is not working. So radical imagination is not like a new concept. It's something we can already see in the world. So examples would be things like degrowth or decolonization, feminism, and environmentalism. All of these different groups or philosophies of thought have looked past the way our world is structured and imagined a new, better way that meets the needs of all people and really fosters space for a more caring and sustainable world. So this is a quote that I love. It's actually from a fictional book by Jordan Ifueko. It's do not ask how many people you will save, ask to what world you will save them. And to me, that really links to radical imagination because we're not just trying to band-aid solution the world right now and fix the problems. We're also trying to reimagine the world for the futures and for people who are coming to imagine what kind of world they get to be in. So my big question is, outside of any constraints, what's one thing you want to see in the world? So if you go to the chat, there should be a link at the top. If you can't see it, let me know. And that's going to take you to a very boring and blank Jamboard. And on that Jamboard, you should be able to fill out some Post-it notes. And I would like you to think and answer that question if you have any ideas. Yeah, I can repost the link, no worries, Zach. All right, I just dropped it in the chat again, so everybody try it and let me know if it works. Is anybody on the Jamboard? Awesome. So yeah, if you guys just want to put your ideas for the question, I can also post the question in the chat for you guys as well. You can also put more than one thing, so just drop as many ideas as you have. The entire system. All right, I'm gonna wrap up the Jamboard. So anybody in their last 30 seconds has anything super cool and meaningful to add, now's your chance. You have some great stuff. Everything looks really interesting. I think it's really neat to see like the balance between like the bigger systemic things, and then also a desire for, you know, more personal things related to well-being, such as like play and art. It's really cool. And the ideas that you guys dropped down are super interesting. Okay, I'm going to call it. Thank you all for sharing. So, social impacts and gaining support. Very cool. We are going to go back to the main presentation just for some final wrap up. So I feel like a lot of the time when we are imagining change, it can seem overwhelming and impossible to see the things that we really want to see happen, things like ending fossil fuels, like people mentioned, or like end of the colonial surveillance state. Like those are such great ones, and it seems so far out of reach. But even the fact that you guys are able to think of those things and believe that that's the change you want to see is like the starting place, because our activism has to come from a place of hope and a place where we are working from outside the structures that we don't believe in. Because if we're only enacting change from within the structures that are already inherently flawed, we're never going to bring about the meaningful change that we want to see. So that is pretty much the end of the presentation. Thank you guys for sharing. I really appreciate that you guys all participated, and brought your ideas and had those discussions, because again, this workshop was really more for holding space for other people and their ideas, and kind of like inspiring everybody to believe that other people have the same vision as you, and that working together, we can bring about these seemingly impossible changes. And together, if we continue to explore and imagine a better world, we will be able to bring that about. So if you want to get involved with Reimagine 17, as I said before, like what we do is we try to bridge the knowledge gap between people who have an interest in the SDGs and want to make meaningful change. So we try to educate, we try to help people, find their active imagination, reimagine what they want to see, engage with the SDGs critically, and then work towards a real solution that they can implement in their community. So if you're interested, you can follow us on Instagram or check out our website. We sometimes have summer internship opportunities. Those are pretty much closed, but if you want to volunteer, you can get in contact, and we would love to see you guys all again. So if you guys have any questions or comments, there's a chance. If not, we'll probably end the meeting. Awesome. Thank you all. Oh my gosh, we're 5 minutes early. All right, I'm going to end it. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.